We're doing some easy cheating quilting sewing today, and we're starting right now. Hey guys, it's Elizabeth from ElizabethMadeThis.com, helping you sew something creative. So I would rather sit and make a garment whenever I sit down to sew. I'd much rather be putting together a jacket or some kind of fun dress. Anything that involves lots of different angles and drapey elements and any kind of creative touches that I can add to it. But once in a while I come across a really fun piece of quilting fabric that just has to be sewn. It literally just sits there and says, make me into a quilt. So my lazy quilting self was thinking, how is it that I could create a quilt that would be really quick to make, involve just simple straight line sewing, and then I could finish in no more than an afternoon. And then I remembered something, cheater's prints. So cheater's prints, if you're not familiar with it, are the quilting panels that you can buy at quilting stores, at fabric stores, where they have the quilted elements, or they have the patchwork elements built into the prints as it is. So you can see on this particular one, I have the borders, and that's all printed on there. So if I wanted to, all I would need to do is just add a backing and the batting to this, and I could just quilt straight along those lines, and then boom, easy, super simple quilt. Or if you wanted to go even easier, you could tie the quilt, which is what I'm going to show you how to do today. So this is a really quick and easy project that you can do really anytime. And it's not going to require a lot of you. I'm also going to show you how to avoid adding binding to the edge of the quilt too, which also is a huge time saver. I love the look of quilt binding on quilts, but it does take more time and energy and a little bit more precision to add to a quilt. And man, when I'm sewing fast and I want to do something really quickly, the last thing I want to do is to fiddle around with bias binding. So this is another option for you when you think about making a quilt. And this particular method that I'm going to show you today works really well for wall hanging quilts or just any kind of small project quilts. So I've got this one that is a print of the national parks in Utah. And then I have another one, which is a little map of the United States. My kids and I are using this for geography. It's pretty fun. But you can see like some of the border elements there are right there on that quilt, so very, very fun. So if you're looking for cheater prints to buy online, I would look for quilt panel. That will probably get you where you need to go. You can also put cheater prints in there because once in a while people will put that in there, and I love it when they do that because it's super fun. Let me show you one more before we get into the tutorial. So this is one that I did a long time ago. The blocks on this one that's how the fabric was printed. So you can see it looks like a piece together all of those blocks, and all I did was just go in and just quilt between those lines. So it's really, really simple, very easy project to do. For this project you're going to need a quilter's panel, so whatever size that panel is, or I would say at least a yard of that particular fabric, or bigger depending on how big you want to make it. Like I said, this method works better for smaller type quilts. So let me get into the tutorial, and I will see you on the other side. So let's talk about the supplies that you're going to need for this project. So besides the quilting panel or the cheater's print that you're going to use, you also want some batting. So you're going to need a craft size bag of batting, and this can be any kind of batting that you like. I'm using a needled cotton batting. I like the feel of this, but you use whatever batting you like the best. You also want to use some lightweight yarn or embroidery thread, a washable marker. You're also going to need some sewing pins, a sharp large eye needle, a glue stick, and your favorite quilting ruler. So besides that, you're also going to need some backing fabric of some sort. You can use just about anything here. Sheets, flannel, muslin, solid cotton, all of those are good choices. Here I'm using a flannel sheet that I have left over from a dyeing project. So this will be perfect for my fabric. So what happens if your quilting panel is maybe a little bit too big for the batting size that you got? Well, you can cut off a strip of your batting from one side and sew it onto the other one. So this is how you piece the batting. So I'm just going to butt those edges of my batting right next to each other, and I'm just going to use a simple zigzag stitch to go back and forth between them. It's going to keep this batting flat as we go to put it underneath all of the layers, and it's just going to be all ready to go once we're done with this step, so that we can prep everything and get it all ready to put together our quilts. So if you need to piece your batting because that's what happened to you, know that you can do that. So now that we have all of our components ready, it's time for us to prep this quilt. So first thing you want to do is lay out your panel on top of your batting. So you want to do this in kind of a flat area. If you are working with Quilter's basting spray, you're going to want to do this outside. Here, I'm going to suggest that you use a glue stick instead of the basting spray. And why am I saying glue stick? Number one, we're using a really small quilt, so it's really easy to use that glue stick. I'm just going to use the glue stick and smear it over that little corner there just to stick it down on top of the batting. I really love the glue stick. It's going to wash out once we go to finish our quilt here. I'm just smoothing it out with my hands on top of everything. And what's nice about the glue stick is that it is going to dry clear. It's not going to gum up our sewing machine at all. And more importantly, it doesn't stink. Sometimes the Quilter's basting spray, it's a great tool, but it stinks really bad. So if you do want to use Quilter's basting spray, you're going to go through this whole process, but you're going to do it outside and let your quilt air out. Either way, you're adding the glue and just little tiny bits at a time over everything. So if you're using the spray, then you're just going to spray a little bit at a time. With the glue stick, I'm just smearing it over just those little corners. And then I'm just going to use my hands to press it down on top of the batting. Make sure that there's no kind of ruffles or wrinkles in either layer of what you're working on. And if you've got blobs of glue, don't worry about it. It's going to wash out later. So just don't worry about it. Just keep it smooth. We're going to keep on adding that glue to it. The glue stick will take you a little bit more time, but I don't know about you, but I have had some kind of scary experiences with the Quilter's basting spray. So yay, glue stick forever. I will not judge you if you want to use it. Just let your quilt air out when you get done with it. So I'm just continuing to go over my fabric, just adding glue to the wrong side of this, and I'm using my hands to smooth everything out, making sure that everything is nice and flat. It's not going anywhere. The purpose of adding the glue here is so that we don't have to pin all the interior of our stuff together. It's going to make sure that when we actually go through the quilting process, whether I'm stitching across everything or whether I tie this quilt, that there's no bunches in our fabric. So the basting with glue is actually a really, really helpful technique when you're working with a quilt. So just take your time here. It's less time. You won't stab yourself like you would if you were using those quilter's pens and things like that. So now that we have everything ready, I'm just going to run a basting stitch around the edges of my quilt. So I'm going to work from the right side of my two layers here that I've got, the batting plus the quilting panel, and I'm going to stitch with a 5.0 millimeter stitch length, which is my longest stitch length. It might be longer, might be slightly shorter on your sewing machine, but I'm just going to stitch really, really close to the edge all the way around. When I get to a corner, lift that presser foot, pivot everything, drop the presser foot, and keep on stitching. So we're just going to go all the way around, all the way around. We're not going to see this stitching, so don't worry about getting perfectly matching thread or anything like that. Just get as close to the edge as you can. Our goal here is to just tack down those edges, make sure that everything is nice and connected together before we go on with all of this. We're not going to have to go through this gluing process for the other side because you'll see how we're going to put this all together in a little bit here. For now, just finish going all the way around those edges and then we'll get ready to trim away all that extra batting that we don't need. So here I've got my quilt. It's all been basted. So now I'm just going to take a rotary cutter, or feel free to use your regular sewing scissors here and just cut away that extra batting. So we're going to cut right along that edge, just getting rid of all that extra batting all the way around the perimeter of the quilt. So once you've done that, put the quilt face down on top of the backing fabric. So as you're looking at it, you should be looking at the batting on top, and then you're just going to pin all the way around the perimeter of the quilt, just every couple inches or so with some regular sewing pins. So once you've put your pins all the way around your quilt, then we need to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch all the way around on top of through all the layers. Don't worry about your fabric hanging off the edge. We're going to take care of that later. But for now, we're going to take it to the machine. We're going to start stitching. So now it's time to stitch through all of the layers. So first thing first, I want to move my needle all the way over to the left. So I'm going to take that stitch width and I'm going to turn it all the way to 0. That's going to move my needle all the way over to the left. The nice thing about this is I'm going to naturally get about a 1/2 inch seam allowance without having to do anything. So now I am just going to use my presser foot as a guide to help me sew right along that edge that we cut earlier from the batting. I'm just going to remove the pins as I go, and I'm just stitching through all of those layers. I've got my batting on top. When I get to a corner, I'm going to pivot it just like we did earlier. So this is a great project for just learning how to pivot and just work all that fabric. So stopping, lifting that presser foot, pivoting everything, keeping that presser foot right and right along that edge. And so this is going to train your eye. It's going to train your hands just to keep working those straight line stitches. So it's awesome practice for just beginning how to sew. Plus you get to quilt at the end, which is really fast and easy. So I'm just keeping on stitching, removing the pins I go. I'm going to keep going all the way around the perimeter of my quilt, and I'm going to leave about 6 inches just totally unstitched. And why about 6 inches? Well, you need room for your hand, right? So we're going to leave that 6 inches unstitched so that we can reach in and turn this thing inside out. So we're kind of making this like a pillowcase sort of thing, if you want to think about it like that. I'm just going to finish this one last corner so you can see that pivoting one last time, and I'm going to finish this last edge, and then I'm going to leave that space unstitched for about those 6 inches so we have space to move our hand and get all that done. So I'm going to take that last pin out, and now I'm just going to trim away the rest of my flannel from the backing. So again, same thing. So either using your rotary cutter or your scissors, we're just going to cut away that extra backing fabric. We don't need it anymore. It has served its purpose. When you get to a corner, you also want to cut away that corner at an angle. So you see that in a second. Oh, there's my hole. That's what I left unstitched. That's what we're going to open everything through in a second. So there's a corner, and I'm going to cut across that at about a 45-degree angle. That's going to remove the bulk from that corner so that when we go to press everything, we're going to get a nice corner instead of a big old lumpy corner. Nobody likes lumpy corners. They're no good. So go around your quilt, cut that away, and now it's time to turn our quilt. So I'm going to reach in with my hand, and I'm going to turn everything outside, right side out through that hole. So I'm just going to work the corners out with my fingers. I'm going to start pulling the fabric through. It's going to look really sad and lumpy right now. Don't worry about it. We're going to press everything in a little bit. Just work out those edges as best you can. I like to kind of wiggle out the corners with my fingers. That's often better, I find, than sticking a chopstick in there. Although with these layers, you can do that too. Just do your best. Get everything all turned out inside. And then when everything is all turned out to the right side, so we're looking at both of the right sides now, then we're going to give it a good press. So you can see I'm kind of working out those corners with my fingers, just giving it a little wiggle, making sure that corner looks good. Working out, finding all of those corners, making sure they are nice and looking pretty good. We're going to keep on working them out as we do that. But now just fold everything under towards that back side and then grab your iron. Use a lot of steam here. If you have a tailor's clapper, that's also a good tool here just to flatten everything. If not, just use your hands. I had an art teacher who said God gave you hands before he gave you a blending stump. Same thing applies here. You have hands before you have a tailor's clapper. So press everything, and then we're ready to top stitch on the outside of our quilt. Now we're going to top stitch close to the edge of our quilt all the way around the quilt. So we're going to use a 3.0 millimeter straight stitch. My needle is all the way over to the left, just like it was when we sewed through all of the layers. You can actually see that I'm getting really close to the edge because I swapped out my foot. So this is a specialty foot called a ditch quilting foot. What's cool about this foot is that it has a little blade on it that allows you to get really close. That blade rides right along the edge of your fabric, or in this case, right along the edge of that black line. So it's a great way for you to get really nice, consistent, beautiful top stitching. Even though we're not adding binding to this like we would on another type of quilt, we're still going to give this a beautiful finish to it. So just keep stitching all the way around everything. Just periodically with your fingers, make sure you're folding under that backing so you're not seeing that too much on the right side. When you get to a corner, go ahead and pivot just like we have been this whole time. Fold everything under, put that presser foot back down, and then keep on stitching. So we're going to stitch all the way around the park, just like we have been doing. This is going to close up that hole that we have from earlier. And then it's time to tie the quilt. So we're finally at the finish. That was so fast. So go ahead and grab your quilting ruler, and we're just going to make marks all across the back of your quilt with your quilting ruler. I love this Get Squared quilt ruler from June Taylor. I think it makes it so fast to just make multiple rows of marks all at the same time. It's really super fast and easy. But any quilting ruler that you have works just great. So we're going to mark all the way across the entire quilt on the back side with your quilting ruler. And don't worry about using a washable marker on this. When you wash it, it will wash out. 100%. I've tested these markers so many times and I've never ever had a problem with the marks not washing out. Once you've marked all the way across the whole back side of your quilt, go ahead and grab your embroidery thread and cut a big long length, and you're gonna just thread up your needle. We want a double layer of thread, so just go ahead and bring the ends of your thread together. Bring it all the way down, so you're working with a nice double layer. You're going to poke the needle from the back side to the front side. You're going to leave about 6 inches of a tail. Poke it away about 1/4 inch on the right side, back to the back. And then I'm just going to go to another mark and do the same thing. I don't have to keep bringing it from the back to the front to the back to the front. I can keep all this work on the back if I want to. You can see I'm just doing that. And then I'm just going to travel in between each of those marks with my thread. I'm leaving all that space in between. And then I'm just going to cut between each of the stitches that I've done. And then all you got to do after that is just tie a simple square knot. So you want to do that at each point that you have a mark. Just tie off those little threads with a good solid square knot. It's going to create some really cool texture on the back side of your quilt. And then that does the work of quilting everything together. And here's our finished quilt. You can see I can barely see those little tiny stitches on the right side all the way across my quilt here. Really simple. I love tying quilts. I think it's a great alternative to just stitching all over the place. Plus, I think it's kind of relaxing to just tie everything. And that is all there is to making a simple quilt that you can finish in just over an hour. Definitely less than an afternoon. So I hope you will give this project a try. So that's how you make an easy quilt with a cheater's print and tying. This is a great project for you to do with your kids. I think it would be really great for you to just practice tying your square knots on the back side of this. Very fun, simple, easy project for you to do. I hope you will try this project out. If you're looking for more easy sew projects, go check out elizabethmadethis.com. I have a whole section on my website devoted to simple, quick, easy projects that you can make in a very short amount of time. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and I will see you in another video. Bye! I hope you enjoyed that video about learning how to make a quilt with cheater's prints. Go check out all the other videos here on Elizabeth Made This, and I will see you later. Bye!